they've already gotten everything and we're just looking to supplement and move on. And my question is, are we working to mastery? That's my very first. There's a big difference between learning the material and mastering it.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. My name is Jessica Gardner, and I am joined today by Paul, Tanya, and our returning guest, one of our favorites, Tara Luse. She is the principal at our Spring Meadows location for the lower school. We are so glad to have you back.
Thank you.
One of our Hall of Famers.
You're really setting me up for a fall.
Oh, no, we're glad to have you. And on today's episode, we are answering a listener question. One of our listeners called in and asked if we could discuss how to make our curriculum more challenging. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to share our tips on how to use some of our materials and the supplements, and advise you on how to go about that with your students. With every episode, as we all know, we always discuss what we are reading right now. Tara, we usually start with a guest.
Perfect. I am about halfway through David Copperfield right now. This is all Tanya's fault. I was reading Demon Copperhead, and then she kept telling me, well, that's just a retelling of David Copperfield. So I felt like I had done it the wrong way around. So I put that to the side. So now I have David Copperfield, and that got a little bleak in parts, so that I'm also reading My Man Jeeves for my dessert. Okay. So I'm in 3 half books, which is not how I like to do that. I like to finish tasks. But it's Tanya's fault.
It is.
And
nobody else has taken me up on this challenge except Tara.
But you did. I remember when you read
did it.
Okay, you did it.
Yes, and nobody else seems interested in the fact that it's a retelling and you should read David Copperfield first.
I mean, that sounds logical to me, but it doesn't mean I'm going to take you up on the
It's
endeavor.
not surprising, Paul.
Yeah.
I guess you're probably not going to watch the Immortals miniseries either.
Nope.
Well, that's your loss.
Well, surprising for you to come out in support of it before it's even come out.
I'm not in support of it.
Oh.
I'm interested, but I'm not in support because my favorite, Louise Penny, they brought out a series of her Gamache books.
Really?
And it was awful.
Oh.
I mean, they just totally just took his character and you might as well have just laid it down in the road and run over it. It was just a totally different person. Yes, it really disappointed me. So I'm not yet in support.
You're excited for it.
I'm excited.
Yes. Curious.
I do want to see it.
Yeah.
I will be trying it, but I may not complete it, depending on what they do. I mean, it's A Gentleman in Moscow.
Yeah. How about you? Are you ready to say you finished?
No.
Whoa, okay.
Well, I went to England and I couldn't take it with me. So I finished it except for the 100-page epilogue. So I've still got to read that. So while I was in England, I just took tiny little paperbacks. I read a book by Cyril Hare, who nobody's ever heard of. And it's a murder mystery but they're judicial. Like he was a lawyer and wrote, and it's like back in the 1930s. And so it's very, very dated, but I did enjoy it. It was well written and somebody had recommended that author to me. And I'm almost finished with Anne Cleeves, who's one of my favorite authors. I know you don't like British murder mysteries, Jessica. But she had written, so she got famous with her Vera books. And then her Shetland books were next. And now she's got this series with Matthew Venn. So she's got 3 successful ones, but they're these books that she wrote before. And so they're very early in her career when she was learning to write. This one's actually very good. The one of them I read I didn't think was all that great, but it's interesting for me to see if an author gets better. I love to start, like the first Louise Penny book, Still Life. When I recommend that to people, they're not thrilled with it.
Is that the one I read?
Yes. You have to just keep going and they get better, hopefully. If they don't, then, I mean, they're just not a good author, right?
Now, Tanya, I thought you read British murder mysteries like in the summer because you were really busy and you needed something light to read. So now you were just going all through winter, just Murder mysteries.
Well, I needed something light to take to England because I knew I wasn't going to be able to, I wasn't going to have much time to read at all, just really on the planes. And they're very long plane rides. So I just picked a couple of these up, but I do read them. Like if I finish a book like War and Peace, I'll then read something light before I move on to the next. My next heavy book is going to be, I think and hope, Great Expectations. I need to reread that. You want to read it with me?
I love that book.
You'll be finished with David Copperfield and you can read it too. I need to reread it. It was my first Dickens and I just need to, well, besides, I guess, A Christmas Carol, which everybody reads.
So you need something in the middle to kind of rinse your brain out.
I do. Well, and just, it's like a little break.
Yeah.
It's where I can read without a pencil in my hand. So that's what I've done.
Nice.
But now I have to go back. I just don't really want to pick it up again. I was so interested in it when it ended. And now I'm like, oh man, another 100 pages.
But 100 pages will go quick.
It should go. Yes, it should go quick. Plus, I need to finish it.
Right.
I've gotten this far. I'm going to do it.
That actually
Did you finish
makes
it?
me happy because I was afraid that you were going to come back and say, I finished War and Peace 3 weeks ago.
No.
No, I have not finished. I'm on like page 1025.
Okay. You're so close.
I am close. I was actually disappointed I did not finish it on vacation because I was trying. I was really trying, but
right. Are you at the point yet? 1025.
It's just where the French army has decided to go back home.
Oh, okay. So Prince Andre and Natasha, you haven't gotten to them yet.
I've gotten to the point where he's traveling with them. Hurt. Okay. And he has accepted death.
Okay. You're right there.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And Pierre is like, he's come to this sort of understanding that everything's outside of his control.
Yeah.
He's happily like living his life as a prisoner and like, that's fine. Life is good.
Right. Like he's really realized what's real in life.
Yeah.
I think he would have to be the central character, wouldn't you?
I do think so, yeah. And I mean,
it's hard. I mean, it takes hundreds of pages to figure out
who the main character is.
I mean, you get to the end before you finally get to see who is the real main protagonist. And I think it's him.
I mean, if you want to say that there's one, yes, I think it would be him. But there's so many characters that bring so much to the story.
Yes. Oh, that you have to have.
You have to have, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you're going to write a 1,200 page book.
And also, the thing about it, I was thinking about this, that like, you can't write a novel like this anymore today because so much of it hinges on the fact that long periods of time go by without any messages getting to the people that need
That's true.
to know.
Oh,
that's true.
Right? So like Pierre's wife's been dead for a while.
And he didn't even know.
No idea,
right.
But today, there's no way that's plausible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What are you reading? Gentleman in Moss? No.
Oh, I finished.
Lincoln Highway.
Yep. I'm still in Lincoln Highway. Nothing new to report, except this weekend I see some stretches of time where
you can actually read.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I find when I stretch a book out too long, I get uninterested in it and I have to then start reading again to get reinterested.
Mm-hmm.
I really do better if I just plow through.
I agree. Even if it's big.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just need that consistent time with the book.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it takes me forever, which War and Peace has taken me forever, but I've just consistently returned to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that is a better experience.
Yeah. And that's why you're dreading the epilogue, because you walked away for 2 weeks.
Because I walked away. That's exactly right. And I, when I finished and was ready to start the epilogue, it was hard not to start it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But now, now it feels like drudgery. But I'm sure once I start reading again, it'll be good.
An object in motion stays in motion.
That's right.
what I have to tell myself with books.
Now, before we start, I listened to last week's podcast while I was traveling, and I have a complaint to make. So this was Paul and Martin and Mitchell.
And Jess. Jess was there too.
I'm sorry. I was going to apologize to Jess
For your absence?
For leaving you in this situation with these three men where anything could happen. It was a very interesting discussion. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
This is called the compliment sandwich.
This is the compliment sandwich.
Build.
Yes. But when we got to the point of talking about Clytemnestra and Agamemnon returning home, and Martin, I think, said that, or it was Martin or Mitchell, I can't remember now. I don't really think it was Paul, said that she killed him after he got home. His wife killed him and said that because, he'd been gone, it took him so many years to get home, which sounded like she was just, an irritated wife. But the truth is, which I know they all know, is that she killed him because he sacrificed their daughter. He let their daughter be a living human sacrifice. Now, what mother would not be upset about that? But no, it was just brushed off. Well, she was just irritated because he was gone for years. No.
So that's your editorial.
That's my editorial note, is that I think they got that totally wrong.
Yeah, I would just plead complete ignorance because I couldn't even remember which king got killed by his wife.
In the bathtub.
Oh.
Like she
all
welcomes
these
him
details
in.
I've completely forgotten. Yeah.
She welcomes him in.
Yeah,
like she's
that's
just so
right,
happy
she
to
does.
see him. And she rolls out the red carpet and he goes to take a bath and she kills him in cold blood.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I'm not justifying it, but I am saying I think it's a bigger deal. I think it's a bigger deal
Than the way it was portrayed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Than just, I'm irritated because you were gone for a second. You came home late.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that actually, see, if you had been there, Tanya, you could have brought that up and it would have actually added, I think, to Mitchell's point, which was because of the way the Greeks treated the Trojans at the end,
Yes.
they were all getting punished. And even
That's right.
the way they treated, for Agamemnon, the way he treated his own family brought punishment back to him.
Yes, I thought it made the point beautifully. In my head, it made a great point. But for the general public, I think you did lose a little.
Well,
Besides the fact
happens
that
sometimes.
I feel like Clytemnestra was wrongly portrayed.
Righting the wrongs.
Yes.
As we like to do.
Well, I try.
Well, on to today's topic. We got a listener request from a parent who uses MP curriculum, and she asked us how to make it more challenging for a student who's just doing really well. And I want to start with you, Tara, because I know that you and Tanya and your team put a lot of care and time into curating every subject and everything that's in that subject and how you go about it, whether it's the classroom at one of our schools or in the homeschool, the things we sell from Memoria Press. So knowing that one size doesn't fit all the time, but that you've really put a lot of thought into every subject, where would you start if you got this question?
It's a good question. It will be
And
a
you
little
do
different.
get that question.
I do
Get it all the time.
I get it pretty. I don't get it as much as you would think. A lot of our families do their research and they understand that what we're doing in a traditional classroom. But when I do get it, my first question is, okay, what do you need to be more challenged? What's the reasoning? I hear, well, my student's bored, or they've already gotten everything and we're just looking to supplement and move on. And my question is, are we working to mastery? That's my very first. There's a big difference between learning the material and mastering it. So that's where I go first. And then in the classroom, it's a little bit more complex for us because we are all working on the same novels. We're all working the same level in math. So with me, I usually say for in the classroom, there is not a lot to do, but be patient. A challenge is coming. They might not be challenged this week, but somewhere down the road, things are going, we have an abbreviated schedule. Our pace is fast. It's coming. So for just a second, just celebrate that your child is doing so well with what I think is a rigorous coursework. But I would say in the classroom, what I can do is I always say, grab their math notebook. Look at that first. Because there are so many skills built into that math notebook that are not just content. It is organizing your thoughts, organizing your paper. And that math notebook, Mr. Wheatley always says that that's one of the best indicators of success in 7th grade is what your 6th grade math notebook looks like.
On the whole.
On the whole. That and your arithmetic aside, but that on the whole, how you organize and do that. So let me see that. If that is pristine, then we'll talk about other things. But if that's not, that's where we start. That's the challenge, is making that a beautiful notebook that's organized and serving the purpose well. And then, it's other things like in the classroom for me, it's penmanship. Show me their study guides. Are they beautiful? Are they writing to the best of their abilities? So those are some of the things I can do in class, but I would more point families to enriching outside from my perspective in the classroom.
I think it's rare that you have a student that excels in every single thing. I have had that before when I was teaching. I did have a student who did everything very well, and it all came easily to her. And I think she was actually the first one of our students who got more than 4 gold medals on the NLE.
Wow.
And so everything did come well for her. So I did enrich her experience when everybody else was editing a paper that we had written, and hers was perfect when I read it. I said, then go back and cut it in half. I want you to make it more concise, which she did perfectly. But it just did come. But generally, students that are very good students do have something they need to work on. And I think it's a shame if we think that everything ought to be difficult for students. I think we need to embrace the fact that some things come easier than others. I did have another student who did everything really well. He always made like top grades on the tests. But I realized pretty quickly into the school year that his reading comprehension was horrible. But it would be really easy for him to hide that because he took very good notes. He listened to everybody else very well. And so he was able to get the right answers. But if I just off the cuff asked him a question about what we had just read, he couldn't answer it. And so that was a hidden weakness that he managed to mask. And when I talked to his mom about it, she said, I had been noticing that, and that is definitely something we need to work on. And this was a student that you would think was just flying through. So I do think there's always something else that needs to be worked on.
I agree. And there's also some skills in there that aren't content driven, that are patience. You're sitting there and maybe you saw long division the first time and you completely understand it. Well, there's patience sitting there while the lesson continues. Right. There's self-discipline and staying engaged during that time and not a distraction. So there's some other things I think that aren't just on the test that we can go, hey, he knows long division. Okay, well, he's sitting there and he's listening carefully the whole time and he's not distracting and he's being patient because
respectful.
Right. And humility comes into that too. Like this student you're talking about, Tanya, who looks like he's flying through, but struggles in reading comprehension. The moment you point that out, he'd be like, "But I'm getting good grades." Like, why?
That's right.
And in walking through that with him, you teach him like, look, even though you may look like you're doing well, like you can always still take help, right?
Yes.
And I mean that's a huge lesson for the students that everything seems to come easily. Is that no, actually, you do have this fault over here, because it's so easy to just get to a point where it's like, nah, I don't need to work.
I don't need this.
Yeah.
I can memorize well.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you brought that up, Tara, because we do talk a lot about how it is more than academic formation. There's a character formation happening too. So yeah, appreciate that.
I do want to go back to, Tara mentioned penmanship's a big deal. And especially in those younger years, like, I mean, I've been in awe when I've sat in primary classrooms here, and you have those quick finishers. And they have routines. The teachers have routines of, okay, when you finish, go back and find 3 letters that could be done better, erase them,
right.
do them again. And so it always gives them something to improve on because nobody's handwriting is ever perfect. And putting in that work early on helps students not get to be where I was in 8th grade, where, I literally had chicken scratch. It was hard to read, and it took some serious effort on the part of the school to fix my problems. And I'm glad they did, but you put that effort at the beginning, and it may look like they're not learning that much because you're spending all this time on penmanship, but it's setting them up for success later on.
Absolutely.
And we do have an accelerated track in the curriculum. So really for students that everything does come easy for and they're motivated, because motivation is a part of it too. I had my oldest son, everything came easy for, but he was happy. He was happy not to work hard, and he was not a motivated student. And so, and Latin just about killed him. He was not a good Latin student. So that was helpful. That everything else came easy to him except Latin. And so, it just depends on the student, but the accelerated track is out there. But even the accelerated track, which is what we're using at HLS, even that comes easily for some students. But as Tara said, eventually Latin is going to get very difficult. There's just no way around it. Eventually, math is going to be more challenging. And it already is challenging. But maybe it's those early years, the arithmetic years, that students master. And once they've mastered it, they are ready to move on, they think. But maybe not. Maybe they're not ready for those abstract concepts that are next.
You've got that developmental progress that's happening in the student's brain, right? As things are getting connected and whatnot, that they just can't think that abstractly. And so, sure, maybe they can move more quickly in mastering their math facts or whatever, but they're just not going to be ready for that next step. And so it's okay to stew in it, right? That's like, right? You get more nutrients out of food if you let it stew than if you just microwave it and off you go, right? Like,
what in the...
Come on.
Yes.
Bone broth? You've heard of bone broth?
Marinade.
Come
Yeah.
on. Like, you let it
There it
stew
is.
for 24
Collagen.
hours. Thank you, Jess. Somebody needs to school Tanya on this afterwards.
Okay.
You can get the flavors real quickly, but you can get a whole lot more nutrients if you let it stew.
I had no idea.
Okay. Well, it's the same thing.
I'm such an impatient cook.
Well, okay. Well, this is explaining
I'm
so much.
robbing my family of nutrients.
You're lucky you made it this far.
Okay, it's hot. Eat.
Not to say that we don't all sometimes do that, but just heat it up and whatever. We're rolling with it. But
Ready to go.
for the younger student, right? Just for them to spend, and what the point Tara made at the beginning about it's different to have learned it and to have mastered it. Right. And it's in that stewing that we master it. And then later on, when we're ready for that abstract concept, it comes.
And I think other than math, really we hear this most about literature, because students with a fluent reading level, and our students are reading at 13 plus by 7th grade. I think I've got that written down, maybe 6th. So they can read it. They are capable of reading anything, but do you really want to put Shakespeare in front of a 10-year-old? Because they're going to miss a lot because they aren't capable of understanding all the adult allusions. And so it's just not the best use of their time to do things too early. So, part of it is just trusting the process and not, what are you in a rush for anyway? There's all of these years that they have to, and we manage to read so much that I think if they do find that they're a 3rd grader and Charlotte's Web is an easy read for them, great. But now let's actually contemplate Charlotte's Web. Like let's look at Charlotte's Web with a pencil in our hands, actually thinking about it and talking about the themes and seeing if we can find them. There's just so much we can do. And there are students are always reading their own books anyway. So if they want to read a more difficult book outside of class time, that's great. Our students are doing that. I see many classrooms in 5th and 6th grade with Lord of the Rings in there, and that's not an easy read.
I would also say, like, let kids be kids. The fact that school is 8 to 3:30 places or 8 to 2:30 doesn't mean that in a homeschool it has to be 8 to 2:30. Right. I mean, I remember habitually being done by noon.
Well, my kids could have been done by noon if they had chosen to.
Well, see, I chose to because then we had a basketball hoop in the driveway in the back,
smart.
and I'd go and I'd play. I had like 3 or 4 hours before my buddy, the neighbor who'd come home from public school, and and that I could play with him. But I had fun for those 3 or 4 hours every day, and I got all the work done I needed to get done.
That's right.
And
you can get it done at home because you're not working in a classroom environment. You're not having to take restroom breaks. You're not having to, what else do you do?
Snack.
You're not having snack time.
Well, you do have to have snack and restroom breaks,
No.
but it doesn't take nearly the time.
No.
It's not like taking 16 of you to the bathroom.
It's not a process
Yeah.
like we have to have in school. So that is a huge advantage to homeschooling, which I kept trying to tell my children. This is your list. When you finish everything on this list and it's done well, you are finished for the day. 5 o'clock, still working.
And also, I want to point out, like, our accelerated program that you mentioned, it doesn't start till 3rd grade.
Right.
And there's an intentionality there, right? Like, K to 2, there are so many basic skills that you really just have to take the time to have them form those letters well,
that repetition.
Oh, so much repetition. But it pays off in the long term.
Can you tell us what are the main differences between the traditional and accelerated
Tanya's
pathways?
going to correct me on this because she's Tanya and I'm me, but
Editorial notes are coming.
They'll be live this time.
That's right. The 3rd grade, some subjects of what is done in 3rd and 4th grade in the traditional pathway get condensed down into 1 year in the 3rd grade in the accelerated, and then all of that kind of moves down a grade, if you will, in the accelerated program. So it's whether it be Latin, Greek mythology, states and capitals,
English grammar recitation. There's something else.
Spelling.
No,
stays.
spelling's the same. I feel like there's something else that we're so great. Christian studies. Christian studies. The Bible we've forgotten.
So those we spend 2 years on those levels in the traditional program, whereas in the accelerated program, all of that would be done in 1 year. And then
so that basically puts us down a year for most things. The only thing that stays on grade level for both tracks is math and
spelling
and writing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything else is slowed down. So basically what we're doing here in 4th grade, students are doing in 5th grade in the traditional track.
Okay.
And we also have supplemental things that aren't in like what our grade level packages are, what's in our lesson plans, right? So the American supplemental readers, those aren't in the lesson plans, are they? Where did they get there?
We have lesson planned them, but they really are optional.
Yeah, because
they are
don't come in the
totally
package.
optional.
There's,
Right.
And obviously we want the read alouds are planned; those should be done. But the science and enrichment sets in K to 2 aren't planned or aren't required. There's a slew of stuff that if you were to buy just the base package, right, and you're doing that you don't get. But if you were to go and look, okay, what do we have in kindergarten? There's other things that you could be doing.
Right. To add on as enrichment, kind of to your earlier point, Tara.
Yes. There's a lot to do outside the classroom with enrichment. I think for Christian studies, we're spending an hour and a half in the classroom. But when you get done with school, you can make that a discussion that could be 8 hours. I mean, it's so rich. The curriculum is so rich. So for what I tell our families who are wanting to do something a little bit faster pace, take what you're learning in the classroom and just expand on it. Talk about it at home. There are also other places, the study guide. Sometimes we'll do a question orally. We'll have 8 questions and we'll write out 6 and we'll talk about 2 orally. Okay, well, then your student can practice their handwriting and write down what they remember for that question and, fill in those gaps. And
Plus the activities. And
the activities, which we in our schedule just don't get to. And also I know 3rd grade does something with their math book. They will do odd and even problems, but they will sometimes only do half of the even problems. So they challenge their students when they're finished with their math seat work, go back at the start of the book and fill in those missing problems. And then they make a big deal on who finishes their math book at the end of the year, every problem. And it's like a bookmark or something, something, just a reward, but just go back. There is always more to do. The curriculum is so rich that I always caution people, I want them to show some restraint in it because we do want children to be children. We don't want to reward their hard work with going, okay, well, here's some more. Here's more hard work. We want them to play outside and do all those things. But there are ways to enrich that are fairly easy, that are those books, that are jumping into the science books, but also, looking at your child and going, what sparking your interest right now? So you love science. Well, let's go on a hike. Let's talk about nature. Let's do all those kind of things that don't necessarily mean more work, but they're just enriching that subject.
Yeah, especially something you're interested in.
Yes.
And like going out at night and looking at the constellations and, something that they had learned in class. And okay, now let's go actually go look at them and enjoy it.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is important. Yeah. Those nature walks. And I mean, it's mind blowing what kids don't know. And even they may have been taught it in the classroom, but when they see it, they don't recognize it. And so having that time, like you're saying, let children be children, but just having that time to go out and have them experience that. We don't have time in our world at school to have field trips and things,
right?
But have that time to go out and do that stuff.
And that means that, and it's easier for the homeschool parent, but that means you have to know what's in the curriculum. You have to be a part of their education. And in a brick and mortar school, it's a little harder because their teachers have them all day. But in a homeschool setting, you are right in the middle of all of it and you are studying it right alongside them. So that is helpful for the homeschooler. Whereas the brick and mortar school parent has got to work a little harder to actually look at what their child did that day in school and think about what you could do with it.
But our primary teachers especially are great in their newsletters of saying, okay, we read this book this week. You should go visit a bakery. Looking up the enrichment and thinking and putting it in their newsletter so they know we talked about how to bake pretzels today. So go to a bakery, go try some different pretzels, make them at home. So that's a little bit of a bridge between the two. And especially in primary, it's really helpful for those parents to know all that we're doing and just to be able to have ideas.
Right, because our primary students aren't in school. I mean, they're homeschooled half the time.
Right.
Kindergarten is only in school 2 days a week and first and second grades 3 days. So they are with their parents quite a bit or a caretaker.
Yes.
So it sounds like if you got this question, there are a lot of initial things you might say, hey, it's actually fairly simple to evaluate whether this is even a need in terms of buying or adding something else. And even there, you might still say, start with a more traditional track and then keep evaluating over time, not just jumping to buying the accelerated package and going for it.
And we will always, when we do recommend, if we do recommend the traditional path, because it is a huge, the reason we did it is because so many people were telling us their students weren't ready for that jump from second grade to third, which is a huge jump for students and for parents. And so that was the reason we did the traditional path. But so if somebody starts with that and thinks that it's too slow, all we have to do is switch out the curriculum manual for them and give them, because the books are the same, and give them that accelerated curriculum manual, and then they can pick up their pace. But I would caution them, just, is that really what you want to do? Do you really want, are you rushing through it? Is your child really bored? Or I sometimes when parents tell me their children are bored, I haven't really seen it in the classroom. I haven't seen that boredom in the classroom. And so I'm a little bit hesitant to take that at face value. What is really, do you think that?
I agree.
Well, I
Absolutely.
mean, every child gets bored of doing the repetitive things.
Yes.
And that's typically what we're asking them to do in homework.
Yes.
Right. So
That's
the parents
right.
are seeing the repetitive, I don't want to do this.
I've already learned this.
Whereas in the classroom, they're getting new stuff. And so,
And they've got that conversation in the classroom that they are engaged in. So
and everybody's doing it with them.
Yes.
It's a group, and the teacher's dynamic and up front and doing it. That's a wholly different thing than looking at a page of math facts.
right, that I have to do tonight
home.
before I
Yeah,
get to
that's
go
right.
play outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
So some of this really is equipping parents and teachers to discern where a student is at, where they need to be, and where they're just fine.
Yes.
that's right.
Okay. Because it sounds like there could be some real pitfalls to making everything hard. Because like you said earlier, hard is coming.
It is coming.
And it might be, even this year, it might not be high school Latin. That will be difficult, but it could be in fourth grade math. You're in fourth grade right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It could be.
And I, just to reiterate what Tara said, like, beware rewarding a kid for hard work by giving them more hard work to do. Like, that's just, I mean, you're going to end up making them disillusioned of like, anytime I achieve something, I just have, let them rejoice, let them celebrate
That they're finished.
that they're finished.
Yes.
And then, and once they've had the celebration, okay, now we go do something else.
Right. Have you seen, I've seen many times when back years ago when my husband was a youth pastor, parents who really pushed their children in a sport and really just kept it going and doing more and becoming like, the lead quarterback in high school so many times. Then those students would say, I'm not going to play when I go to college. And it was the parent's dream always, but the student is just burned out and has had too much. And you really don't want that to happen academically. They do need to enjoy their childhood. And I feel like academics can be the same thing as pushing through a sport. Just because you're really good at it doesn't mean you want to just do more of it or make it the center of your life.
Yeah. And I mean, inculcating a love of what they're doing requires a balance, right? And like I was just using the example in class the other day, like if I eat too much ice cream, I love ice cream. If I eat too much, I don't feel well, right? And it's the same thing that if we want to, we don't have to teach kids to love ice cream, but if you want to teach kids to love reading, you have to give them the challenge and help them succeed in that challenge. But if that's all they ever get to do, then they're just going to burn out on it,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think sometimes too, is it just because they can, you need to stop and go, should they? Just because they can do, I have no doubt that if I went down to a second grade classroom and said, I'm going to teach you a little algebra today. We're going to do 3x equals 9. Now this X, all it does is it's just what number do you multiply by 3 to get to 9? Those kids are going to go, I know things. So I'm going to go 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3. Yeah, you've learned algebra. Look at that. We've done it, but we haven't. So I'm just going to be the voice of caution here and just say, have some restraint and be really intentional and thoughtful about what you're doing. And just, it is true that if you just give them so much, then after a while, they don't love it anymore. So, and I also think Tanya said earlier too, that I think is wise is parents always want to be challenged in that student's best subject, but take a stop and look back and see where they're weak and don't just keep running ahead with that strong subject, but also look back at where their weaknesses are and go, okay, math is going super. So we're going to spend a little extra time on our grammar forms. So that's where the need is. It's not, I just need to give you more math because you love it and it's great, but it's dinner and dessert there. You've got to work a little bit more on the other things too.
We want well-rounded people, not lopsided people.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's wise. This has been a helpful conversation. Oh, Tara, we're so glad that you joined us today.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. And whether it's the traditional or accelerated track or any of the supplements or enrichment materials, you can find those all at memoriapress.com. And you can contact us and get personal help from our customer service representatives. They're all trained and happy to advise you. So thanks for joining us on another episode, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.